you're killing intimacy two ways because you're hiding from them. Which intimacy, if you look at the word and the way we say it, into me see, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've never thought. That just blew my mind.
You're listening to Studio 22. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoy the video. Please don't forget to leave a like.
Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications for more future content.
Welcome to Studio 22. I'm Brock O'Hearn with my co-host Will Meldman, and we are here with Coach Lee. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks, guys, so much. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, excited
Definitely.
to have you here. We just met officially 2 days ago?
No more than that.
Was
no
it
more than 2 days ago.
Dude, time is flying over here. We've been in this studio all day, every day for 4 days now. This is the fourth day?
Day 4.
Yeah, no, I was saying no more than that. Like it could not be more than.
Oh yeah.
Because it's only been a couple days. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a whirlwind over here, but and some of that one of these 4 days we met, but I think it was 2 days ago.
We're in a time vortex.
That's what it feels like. But yeah, man, we started checking out all your stuff and really like what you do, man. Really appreciate you making time to come on.
Definitely.
Yeah. How'd you get started in your space?
Well, I left college early because I was doing internet marketing, and this was like 1999. The internet was very young, and this company wanted to hire me to do that. And I remember the first week I was there, the vice president of that company brought me in his office, and he said, "So do you think this internet thing is going to last?" And I kind of smiled, and I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "See, I'm not sure. So we're going to need you to do a few things." And I had switched my major a few times, but one of the times I majored in English so I could write. It's like, we're going to need you to write. We're going to need you to learn our material and do internet marketing. And we're going to need you to do some other assisting. So it wasn't just a single job. And what ended up happening was one of their marriage coaches developed a terminal illness. And they said, "Look, you know our material really well. Can you fill in for like 2 weeks? And then we'll get a replacement." So I did. And I wasn't speaking on my own authority because I was only like 20. And so I would say, well, so-and-so, Dr. So-and-so would say this, and this is what our position is in this situation. And after 2 weeks, they said, well, go another 2 weeks. And people were liking it. And I didn't try to, nobody likes a know-it-all 20-year-old. So I definitely didn't do that. I would try to be very humble and just say, well, I have read and, statements like that. So they actually came to me about 3 months in and said, would you like to get certifications and just do this? Because it's going well, and we were concerned your age might be a problem, but nobody seems to have a problem with it. So I started getting certifications and going to these trainings and stuff like that. And eventually went out on my own to do what is now called Coach Lee, as a YouTube channel and articles and some online courses. So that's what happened. Unfortunately, it was because someone passed away. He was a terrific human being, but some of the things I learned from him, I was able to apply right away.
That's great.
What were some of the early challenges of, being a part of an organization and then going out on your own?
Well, fortunately, there weren't a lot of challenges because I did have some an establishment for myself. I was able to do some things on behalf of the organization to bring some awareness to my name, and they also let me start and do some things on YouTube, and I wasn't in violation of a contract with them because they were primarily about marriage stuff. And so I was a little bit of a loophole because I started doing so much with the dating world and all that. And shortly after, I was in Cosmopolitan, and then I was on the Today Show in Australia, interestingly enough. That's when they kind of said, this is getting a little out of hand, because it got really confusing because I had I was Coach Lee, but then they were like, but are you with this other organization? And so they kind of just suggested we part ways, and I didn't dislike that idea. And so we transitioned. So there wasn't a lot of challenges. It was actually a really smooth transition. And I was very fortunate to have a lot of media early on when I did that allowed me to just smoothly go right into Coach Lee and doing those things. But I could see where there could have been a lot of trouble if I had just started from scratch, like we were discussing before the show started, how difficult it is to get a YouTube channel going these days. I mean, it's to get some traction. It's just it's difficult to do.
Absolutely.
We're definitely learning that firsthand with just starting it now. And I have friends who have had majorly successful YouTubes, and I've seen over the years the algorithms change, how it's affected their work, their reach, that the ad revenue, everything that keeps it alive and going. And it's interesting coming in now where it's like we're fresh to it, but we're excited about it, and no matter what, we'll find a way to make it work. But definitely every time we have the opportunity to talk to somebody who's successful in that space, we like to pick their brain and figure out things, what hashtags work, what time of posting, like all that kind of stuff. But it's a constant evolution, I would say.
Yeah. And I was really fortunate. I've got to be really careful because I really keep my clients confidential. But there was one who came to me who is a tremendous YouTube star, has multiple channels, all with millions of subscribers, and has accolades actually put on him by YouTube, some of their publications. And he's been interviewed, and he's famous for being able to do a lot with YouTube channels. And he does consulting for people who have YouTube channels. So we did some trading, and he was looking at some of my analytics. And he said, what's funny? He said, I don't want you to change too much, because he said, you're doing a lot naturally that's working really well. And some of it, he said, I don't even know how to tell you how to do it. He said, you're just kind of doing it. So fortunately, I think this was a good move on my part. I said, tell me what those things are, just in case, things go sideways at some point, I can go back and look and make sure I haven't changed things. So that was really fortunate. And one of the biggest things he told me was, he said, what you want to do is pretend that your audience is an ape with ADHD. He said, you've got to keep giving the ape a banana. So no offense to my audience, you're not all apes. But what he was saying is that some people will do a video and they don't do any editing. They will allow it to slow down and that kind of thing. And he said, you can't do that. You've got to realize that there needs to be something that feels fast, that they're getting this information fast. And he said, lists are really big, because the way your mind works, if you get one, you want two. If you get step number one or point number one, you think, okay, there's point number two. Well, I got to stick around for that one. And so you go down a list, you're more likely to keep people watching the video longer, which is the number one metric for YouTube, is how long people watch your video.
Yeah.
And if that average is good, then they're going to recommend it more across the platform. So anybody out there who's starting YouTube, that's a good thing to think about, is how long you can keep people watching your videos.
Interesting. When you first started your YouTube, so it was when you were 20, was that?
No. So I'm 42 right now. I first started my YouTube channel 4.5 years ago or so.
You look our age. You look 30, 31.
Thank you, Will. You're my favorite person.
No, I'm serious.
Now we're going to go into Health Secrets by Coach Lee.
Exactly.
Kelp.
There you go.
Speaking of lists, I was watching the 7 mistakes after a breakup. And I was, like you said, I literally couldn't stop watching once I was into it. But that was so intriguing to me. And I feel like I could really relate to like each item on the list. And, you kind of find yourself in different stages of each one. Your ex does some of them, you do some of them. And it's like, it just seems so, applicable.
Like a house of cards. That like you mess up one thing and oh my goodness, it all fell down. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's some leeway. People often will say, I've made every mistake. Is Coach Lee, is there any chance I can fix it? Oftentimes there still is. But one of the interesting things is that I do a lot of anxiety coaching and performance anxiety. And it applies so much to a breakup, because when someone's been broken up with, their anxiety is through the roof. They feel like that there's all this pressure on the moment to get their ex back, like right then. And it's almost like somebody's being held over a cliff by one arm and they're slipping. That's what it feels like emotionally. And so it's pretty similar to, say, having a 5-foot putt to win the Masters or something. You feel like everything is riding on this. And so one of the first things I have to do is help people realize that's actually not true. That you don't have to get your ex back today to get them back. And that you're actually better off to back away. And that feels so counterintuitive. But one of my performance anxiety clients was in the news 4 or 5 years ago, just to incredible levels. And I can't reveal too much about it, except that his life was in danger pretty much constantly. And he was continuing to do the thing that put him in danger. He's like, I'm not going to stop. He said, I need you to know that, but I need you to help me be able to do it, because he had a wife and he had a child. And he's like, if it were just me, I could do it. But knowing I could leave a widow and an orphan, and it was similar in terms of what he would say to someone who's been broken up with, in that he felt this incredible pressure on the moment, and that he could not find the strength to do what he knew he needed to do. And so that's where you have this, don't make these mistakes, don't make it worse, and then do these things that are proactive. And even though you have this anxiety, do them anyway, which is, one of those secrets. Hey, if you figure it out, let me know, right? But that's what usually people can get to a point where they can do that.
And I think like the friend point too of like, if you're talking to one of your mutual friends, and even if they think they can help you, they're still probably just going to exacerbate it and make it worse.
Oh, yeah. They overestimate their ability most of the time. And I remember I used to do coaching calls. Now I have a staff of coaches who do those, and I mostly do videos and courses and workshops. But I remember a coaching call where someone told me that, well, my friend told me this. And I said, okay, well, how old's your friend? Oh, he's 22. Okay. Do you know how many breakups he's been through? Let me see. And this person had known him for a while and said, I think he's been through like 3. I was like, well, that's more than most people by 22. But do you know how many I've seen? I said, it's not necessarily that I'm sitting here I'm just so smart. It's once you see thousands of cases, you start to notice patterns. And we are really done a disservice by a lot of the love stories, and a lot of them are beautiful stories, the Hollywood and movies and TV. We're taught the opposite of what's reality most of the time. And one of them, I can't think of the name of the movie, but it's from the 80s. And this guy is broken up with, and he goes out to this girl's yard, like by her window, and he holds up a boombox.
John Cusack?
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's the actor, yeah.
And he holds it up and it plays this music. I think it's In Your Eyes is the song, which is a great song. But, that was what won her back, was he did this grand gesture. And it's beautiful. But that's actually not reality at all. It's just not.
That'll get the cops called real quick.
Yeah. You're trespassing and stalking and everything.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, relationships I feel like you could deep dive them in a million different ways, and then anxiety as well. First thing that's coming to mind for me is now that we were talking about anxiety is what are some tools that are, you think they would help somebody with anxiety, performance anxiety, or just anxiety in general?
So a lot of times when I'm working with, say, a really high level elite athlete, he or she will put so much onto their performance and how it is their identity, how it's their value, not just the way other people see them, but the way they see themselves. And so I have been fortunate enough to be with some people before they go to participate in a really high elite sporting event. And they'll come over to me right before they start. And the question, based on what we've talked about, they'll say, so no matter what happens today, I still have, and they will name things they still have that are very valuable. So for example, it could be family, could be a car, could be a house. I mean, it doesn't have to be only things we see as like, really just a mature appreciation. Like, so it could be a car.
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily need to be like an emotional response or like a relationship based.
Right. It can be a little shallow.
Okay.
Like it can be a possession, anything that just kind of brings a smile across your face. So it could be a car. It could be a trophy. That's something you've already won. It can be an achievement elsewhere. a house, whatever. But you make this list of things you still have, even if you fail. And there's a particular guy who he went through a period of tremendous success, and now I guess you could say he's in a slump, but I'll just be honest and say I wish I could have a slump like he's having, But he came over and he was about to start his sporting event, and he just said, no matter what happens today, I still have, and he went boom, boom, boom. And I said, you sure do. And no matter what happens today, it's not going to be taken from you. You still have it. So that way, when you go out there, you don't feel like you're starting at bottom and you've got to earn something. You feel like I've already got something. This is frosting on the cake, right? Which is a much better mindset than feeling like you have nothing and you've got to go fill up this jar with something, because it's sort of the law of attraction. If you operate from a standpoint of neediness or of having nothing, you're less likely to attract something. But if you operate from a mindset of plentifulness, of having things already, of feeling grateful, then you are much more likely to attract people and to be able to have a mindset where you can perform at very high levels. And so we see people who are able to achieve under pressure, and we wonder, how do they do it? Usually it's because they don't feel like this is their only shot at it. I love the Eminem song, is it 8 Mile, where he says, like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. Or
Till I Collapse is the name of the track. Yeah,
okay.
But the film is 8 Mile. Yeah.
And, there are people who can function where they feel like this is my only shot, or this, I've got to do this. They are the exception. Most people do much better when they establish within themselves, I already have it made. I don't need this. Now that you kind of play with yourself a little bit, because that doesn't necessarily have to be true, right? Like, or at least to how other people see it. Because some people, if they go in and they have a fairly modest lifestyle or whatever, well, it all depends. Do you really like that? Do you appreciate your own life? Can you find things to be grateful for? So it doesn't have to make sense to other people. But if you can find something to be grateful about in the midst of anxiety, usually you're going to be much more successful if you have to achieve with anxiety plaguing you.
I love that, because how it's kind of contributed to anxiety, because I do a gratitude list in my head every night before I go to bed. It awesome. Really helps me calm down and get in that, get to sleep. But it also gets me in like a positive mindset as well. So I love hearing that can kind of help anxiety, which I guess, is why it can kind of calm me down too.
Yeah, I think honestly having a gratitude mindset, and then obviously, like you're saying, an abundance mindset as well. But the gratitude mindset in itself is, regardless for me, whatever happens, good or bad, I'm grateful for it, because there could be a lesson in there. There could be an opportunity for growth, understanding, a place for empathy, whatever it may be, so that I can show up better in the world. And no matter what the pressures or stresses of what's going on, whether I'm on the biggest film I've ever been on, or I have to do a public speaking engagement or whatever it is, I'm grateful for everything. And we were talking about this morning when we first woke up, we're on day 4 of endless podcasts, and we're so grateful for those. But it was like, oh, I'm kind of tired today, and it's like, it's not the mindset of like, I've got to get up, I've got to do these podcasts, I've got to do this. It's no, let's change that word to, I get to get up and do it. I get to wake up
hell yeah.
and work out. I get to do these podcasts. And then we get to have awesome conversations with people just like yourself. And now obviously you right now, and enjoy it. And it makes the conversations, I feel, better. And it is really a mindset in the way we show up in the world. And it's not just the gratitude, but it shows up in your relationships, your friendships, your work life, your health, your mental health, and how can we continue to keep growing in that space? And so I guess with me saying that, I'm curious, do you have maybe a list or attributes that you could list that would be great for someone to have better health in mental health or in the anxiety space, and
yes,
all of that in general?
And to do that, I want to tell a quick story. It's one thing to have tips you can give and talk to people, but when you're able to experience them, you're much more effective. For example, I think Lee Trevino he said, I don't want to have a coach who can't beat me, which explains why he didn't have many coaches. But I was diagnosed about a year ago with melanoma. It was in July, and it had been there a while. It had been there 2 years or more,
Wow.
Possibly 3 years, but at least 2. Which, if you know anything about melanoma, I mean, you know what it does to people. You know how deadly it is and how it can be very quick. It can kill you in 60 days.
Oh, wow.
And this had been there over 2 years. And I remember being at a point where I thought, if I can just live 2 more years. And I don't know if either of you can relate to that. I couldn't at the time until it happened to me, but actually thinking if I can get 2 more years, see my boys, my youngest get into college, and just get 2 more years where I could get my head together and have this time with family, I'll be happy. And I remember getting the call that it had not invaded my organs, that it was surface level, which is if you're going to have it, that's what you want. And they said, we can remove it and you will be fine. And I remember that day, and I'm so glad that I have that day, because all it took, I remember thinking, if I can sit on the back porch and have a cup of coffee, I will be the happiest human to ever live. Like, that's all it took, was on the back porch, and there was a little breeze. And I was like, oh, how awesome. I get a little breeze. It's like everything was making me happy. And I realized how sad it would be for people who maybe they're not easily pleased, and it takes a lot to make them happy. Not just for the people around them, but for that person. Because I thought, I'm the luckiest guy ever because I'm sitting here thrilled. I got a breeze and a cup of coffee. And it was because of the old saying, a sick man only needs one thing to make him happy. Just one thing, right? And I was in that situation. In many ways, I felt like a dying man, and I only needed one thing to make me happy, and I got it. And so sometimes you have to look at the ultra negative to overcome anxiety. So, for example, let's say that you have anxiety and you're thinking of things you're grateful for, which is awesome, and that's one side of the coin. Sometimes you have to go the other side too. Pull out the heavy artillery here and think about a story like that. Sometimes I have to tell my boys, for example, my kids, I'll say, there are kids who are hoping they get to eat this week in the world.
Yeah.
And that sounds like, oh, you're trying to shame me or guilt me. But it can also be an incredible sense of framing to look into that and to think about maybe more difficult times in your life and where you've come from, or to think about the situation that other people are in. And so, for example, Ben Hogan used to say he felt sorry for these country club boys because he said, man, I'll be playing in a tournament. He would call them country club boys. They grew up with a good life, and they just kind of got to play at the club and all that. And he said, they missed the green, and it's like the worst thing that ever happened to them. And they're all rattled. He said, I missed the green, and I'm like, I'm getting to play golf.
Yeah.
So think of those devastating things that have happened to you, or even witnessing other people's devastations, as basically tools that can strengthen you. Because if you're able to look at it like that, that's a much more powerful position to be in. I missed the green, but at least I'm getting to play golf. Whereas you missed the green and it's a traumatic event for you, your performance is more likely to be good from Ben Hogan's point of view, which may explain why he did what he did and won the U.S. Open. Was it 2 years after he was hit by the bus?
Yeah, something crazy like that.
And, the same thing I think we're seeing with Tiger Woods is that he was in a position where it was in question whether he would even get to play again.
Yeah.
And then he won the Masters, which is just a beautiful story. And I think a lot of that can be his appreciation for the game and for where he was in life was in incredible framing in his mind. And that not only am I here doing well, but I didn't even know if I'd be able to play again. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
There's a quote that I absolutely love, and it's, life is not what happens to us, it's how we react to it. It's our reactions and how we show up and what we do with the stuff that happens around us that really determines our life experience. And I think about that all the time. And I also think about how, people have different pain tolerances or resilience or, emotional tolerances or intelligence as well. And so something that could be detrimental to one is another day in the life of another. It's a brush off the shoulder. It's no problem. And so it also, for that perspective, helped me show up in the world, not only with family, with friends and relationships and everything. It helped me show up because I'm like, you know what? It might be nothing to me. I've been through plenty of things in my life, traumatic events and everything. And I'm at this point, but they're not there, so that I don't want to add to that weight because that one thing could be crushing them. That is just me getting a coffee in the morning. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think when we're able to really step back and even put yourself in other shoes, because it's very easy to be like, yo, this is my world, my story, my life. And you only focus on what's right in front of you. That if you can step into the shoes of somebody else and kind of let your ego go down and maybe have some empathy and try to understand what's going on, it really helps us show up better for each other as a whole, I think. But there's things that, lessons and experiences I've had over time that have taught me this. And I always try to share wherever I can. That's why I love having conversations with people like you who, you dedicated your life to this and it's truly in service of others. And then you have your own experiences to add to that as well. And it's the more you can share, the more you help people. And it's the coolest thing in the world, man. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And another layer of all this, and you touched on it some, is the idea that when you're having anxiety, especially if it's performance-based, and I shouldn't say that especially, because if you're having anxiety, it can be about so many different things and you don't really care what it's about. You just know I'm feeling this terrible nervousness and like I can't move forward and that this is just anything in the future is devastating. You are taking on too much. So for example, a golfer. One of the things I will say to golfers is stop trying to take all 18 holes on at once. And then when they kind of, okay. Then I say, stop trying to take on so many shots at once. This shot, the other we don't even know where it's going to be. This shot is your entire world right now. And that's not to put pressure on that shot. It's simply allowing yourself to stay in this shot. You don't have to go any further than this. And dialing it back to where instead of trying to take on minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, you just take on what's right here. And I was good at that before the melanoma diagnosis. But let me tell you, when you hear that, this is melanoma, or people out there, this is cancer, this is whatever. That's where I learned to really go into the moments within the seconds, because if you allow yourself to go too far ahead of this moment, you can't take it all on. And science is showing us the way the brain works, that the most we can take on without causing actual measurable trauma to ourselves, 7 seconds. I mean, think about that, 7 seconds. That if you try to go beyond that, now we can handle it. We can handle thinking 10 minutes down, but you're starting to make it to where you're out of balance. You're not designed to do more than that. And that's why we feel anxiety. Most people, let's get outside the world of sports, relationships, life, whatever. If you have a conversation with them, which is what I do, and I start asking, well, tell me what you're thinking. What's this nervousness? What's this anxiety? What is it in your mind that triggers this? And they start telling you it's usually, almost always, so far out in front. It's, well, this is out on the horizon, or this, if there's dealing with social anxiety, I'm going to see this group, or I have to go to work Monday, or whatever it is. And if you can start to get them to dial back and just, hey, stay right here with me, just right here. That's where the power is. And that's where not only success is, again, talking about Tiger Woods, that first Masters he won, when he made that last putt, I saw an interview and they said, what was your first thought? He said, I actually felt a little confused. I'm like, what? Tiger Woods felt confused? I don't know if he used the word confused, but then he said, because I realized I had no more shots to play. He was so focused and was not thinking ahead. He was staying right on this shot that when that putt went in, he was like, I don't know what to do next, because I'm so used to going right to the next shot and staying right there. And that probably explains why he's who he is.
I read a lot of Eckhart Tolle and, the power of now and the new earth. And he speaks a lot about the present moment. And I feel like that's super relatable to kind of what you're explaining as well. Right.
Right.
And that really did help me a lot with anxiety, like not worrying too much about the future or the past, and and just trying to focus on what's happening right now. And, in like AA and stuff like that, they say one day at a time, right? Because, you know, a month of sobriety, a year of sobriety is just way too much to handle. And to hear 7 seconds is like mind blowing, because even one day at a time is like still technically way too much time to
It is.
think about. It's like 5 seconds at a time, But
Yeah.
I've definitely heard, there's a saying, basically how anxiety is seeing yourself in the future, more or less, and depression is kind of like reliving trauma in the past. And I've always been intrigued by the lines between the both of them too, and how people can navigate both of them, honestly. But yeah, absolutely, like casting a net. There's a difference between casting a net and trying to catch everything versus hyper focusing on the one fish, right? The one thing that you need at hand, and being present in those moments too. It's like it's awesome to hear that, because it's definitely a mindset that I've studied, and I've seen the line between very hyper successful people is when they can hyper focus their energy into one thing in one moment and being present. And because really all we have is right now, right? This is
Right.
the only moment that we do have. So if you could focus everything into that, all that energy goes there, and then it takes you to the next place and the next place, and the next place. Cause like you can, paint your picture and think you're going to have every single shot you're going to when you get on the golf course. And the next thing you know, it bounces off the house, and then it's a whole different ball game. You know what I mean? Golf game. And it's just nice to be able to pull back and say, okay, well, let me just take a second. Let me settle. Let me breathe. And then let me just be.
Mm.
And then what happens next, And I've had depression my whole life, and dealing with that and understanding things that I can do to actively work on being better, and also the mindset, being positive. That's one thing that I think my friends over the years, that no matter how deep I was in it, they would always say, coming forward now, you would always say, be positive, be positive. I'm like, well, it's the only way I could think about getting through it, even though everything else pointed me to want to be the other way, So there's little tricks that I think that we can do, even physically, shocking our body or putting a smile on your face that you don't want to for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it is. Go do a cold plunge, do things to like really get yourself out of the situation. Because if you even look at people's body language, which I'm sure you see all the time, you can see somebody who has anxiety. You can see it physically. You can see someone who has depression, the way they sit. It's like you can mentally picture someone who's like slumped over, a little quiet, reserved, and I know that firsthand. So when I do that, I try to just immediately change, open up, and just focus on things that are important to me and things that matter, and being grateful. If I'm grateful for every single moment, then what is there to be sad about, Although
Yeah, exactly.
easier said than done, but yeah.
I've definitely been extremely lucky. My brothers and I, we lived in a very, under fortunate circumstances. But it wasn't until, I've had 2 experiences where doctors told me I shouldn't be alive right now. There was nothing threatening me after that moment, but there were 2 experiences that could have caused it, should have caused it. But like those moments I felt have like certainly been the most effective in like making you look around and smell the roses, and just life changing. I think life changing is like the only way to really describe it. But yeah, I think lucky and life changing. But like you said, it really resonated with me. Like you got to go all the way in the negative direction to really experience what you're going through now.
Yeah, that's a valuable tool. And sometimes we don't want to think about that. But I had it happen again for me, and I appreciated it. But there was a nurse who was examining me, because I have to go in every 3 months now for a few years for them to check me out. And she had an iPad where they had pictures of the melanoma. And this particular nurse had, she may have been a physician's assistant, but she hadn't seen it yet. And she just said, I just want to see what the original look. And she stopped and she goes, oh my. And there was just this quiet. And she said, that's a nasty looking one. She said, that's probably the worst I've ever seen. And she's like, she just stopped and looked at me and she said, you are a lucky man. And I just remember feeling in that moment, another moment where it didn't take much to make me happy. It was just, that made me happy, and unfortunately there are people who don't get to hear that news. And that's sad and unfortunate, but sometimes we have to to think a minute about those things so we can appreciate, our lives. And one of the things that you, I'm trying to remember what you said, but it made me think of something else, which was there's something I call directed laughter. Okay. And it's where I think it was you talking about putting on a smile for 30 seconds, even when you don't feel it. And there are chemical changes when you make yourself smile. But I will tell people that let's say that things are not going your way. All right. And you're having a bad day and there's some negatives. What you can actually do to help yourself feel better is something called directed laughter. And if you've ever seen Austin Powers, you know how Dr. Evil will put his pinky up to his mouth and he'll go, "Woo, like that.
Yeah.
I'll tell people, do that. Just go, just do that. And I usually say, you can say, everything's going according to plan, which is a really sarcastic statement, but it's also funny. And then do that evil laugh. And people kind of think that sounds just like such a simplistic thing. And then they do it and they're like, I do feel a lot better.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'll even tell some of my golfers, hey, you're out there and let's say you hit a bad shot. I said, I get it. You want to break the club in two and all that. I said, go ahead and say everything is according to plan or all part of the plan. And just kind of take a minute to laugh about it. You can refocus and get serious and go to the next shot. But taking that moment to push back a little bit against the negative and almost mock it is a pretty powerful thing to do. And you get the benefit of even fake laughing produces dopamine in your brain.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful, and it helps your serotonin levels. And there's some debate of whether it increases or lowers them. And all I know is people feel better,
Right.
Doing this fake laughter. So hey, if you want to try laughing like Dr. Evil, it feels good to do.
I think you're going to see me on the golf course doing that a lot.
I see this right.
Yeah, you'll definitely know. One thing I would just kind of love to ask you about is if you just kind of had blanket breakup advice for someone that, let's say they, just broke up or got broken up with, what would kind of be some things that they can focus on during that time?
Okay. So the first thing, let's assume that you're the one who's been dumped, because that's usually the person who is hurting the most and wants to get back with the other person. I know that that's not always the case, but let's just assume we're talking to a person who has been dumped. The first thing you need to do is give them the breakup, because most people, they try to fight, they try to beg and plead and let's talk this out. There will be a time for that. Okay. At least hopefully there is. But if this person has dismissed you from their life, in that moment, you're not going to talk them back into it. Okay. You might think you have, but usually they do that because they just want you to shut up and they want to make it easy and they don't want to have to deal with this right now. And so they'll do it for 2 or 3 days and then they're going to break up with you again. Now they resent you even more because you won't give them what they think they want. So most people are shocked to see how powerful it is to just give them the breakup, because the biggest thing people don't get is the only way they're going to see their way to coming back to you is if they get to experience the breakup and it's a negative for them. If you stay there, and you just keep contacting them, you won't leave them alone, you show up, you beg, you plead, you talk, you're not letting them experience you being gone. And so, whereas the breakup is a concept they think they want, they don't really know that until they get to experience it. And that's where since really the year 1999, which just blows my mind, it's been that long, but I've been watching this, and we as people are such creatures of pattern. You can see this is most likely what they're going to do. Most people, if they were in a good relationship, okay, and that is something that kind of needs to be there. It had to be a good relationship at one point, right? If they break up with you and are allowed to live broke up from you, they actually have to experience the consequences of their actions. We're talking somewhere in the 70% range of the time, they will regret the breakup, doubt their decision, and at least consider getting back together with you. But they have to actually live in the breakup and think, I could lose this person, which the only way you can show them they could lose you is by showing them you could stay away. So that is something that I can sit here and say, and you think easy for you to say, because it feels like you're losing them. But the thing is, you've already lost them. So you're not going to lose them more. As a matter of fact, if you back away, you make that space for them to actually come towards you. Whereas if you're chasing and pursuing them, have you ever chased a bird in the yard? It runs away from you, right? But if you stay here, it'll actually kind of, a lot of times, just kind of skip and hop and get closer to you again because there's no need for it to run away. And so if you don't chase this person, there's no need for them to run further away from you emotionally. And that's when you can actually start attracting them again, re-attracting them. So that's the biggest thing that I would say to someone. And I do have something called the emergency breakup kit, which some people like the name and some people think it's cheesy. And that's just what I thought of calling it a few years ago. And it's something that's available on my website, and it's a guide to getting your ex back. But if most people would just give them the breakup, they put themselves so far ahead as far as being able to reattract this person. And the tables a lot of times turn, and the other person is begging them to come back, which is beautiful.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think what I've noticed in relationships, my own and, family and friends and everything, is that communication is such a massive key. And sometimes communicating can be difficult for, people in a relationship, and whether that is a friendship or romantic or whatever it may be. But are there any tools that you can think of or know of that help people communicate better, or maybe even receive communication better?
Yes. So first is that you don't teach the other person to deceive you. All right. And that sounds, what is he talking about? It's where I'm going to punish you if you tell me something I don't like. So if I say, hey, Will, did you use my car yesterday? And you're like, no, I didn't. Well, that's because you think I'm going to punish you if you tell me yes, right? And so there's some incentive for you to be dishonest with me. But if you know me and you know that I'm just going to say, oh, well, I wish you hadn't done that. Didn't we? And I'm not just being unreasonable. That doesn't mean there's not consequences, but you know that I care about you and I'm not going to do something unreasonable, blow up and yell at you, whatever. Then you're not going to be tempted to lie to me. Now, the reason that's a big deal is because when you start lying to someone, you're killing intimacy two ways, because you're hiding from them. Which intimacy, if you look at the word and the way we say it, into me see, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've never thought. That just blew my mind.
That's a clip.
So when you deceive or lie to someone, you're hiding. You're not letting them see into you. And so not only are you not letting them be closer to you, but you're preventing your own self from being closer because you're hiding. And when you hide from someone, you don't allow your own self to feel closer to them. And they are actually interacting with a lie and not the real you. And so you're killing your closeness, and you will feel it. If you have experience, and unfortunately we all have told lies. That's a commandment we all have broken. The people you lie to the most, you will feel the furthest from. That doesn't mean you're not around them a lot, but you will not feel close. You won't have that warmth and that intimacy with them, because they're not seeing the real you. They're not seeing the facts and the feelings of your life. So that's the first thing. The next thing is going to be that you learn that you don't have to get everything off your chest right now, which is, we're told the opposite. We're told, oh, you got to get it out there. You got to get it off your chest. And that's quite a bit different than what my mom used to tell me when I was a kid, which was, if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say anything. Now, that doesn't mean that you build it all up inside and you explode eventually. But there are some things that you just don't have to make a big deal about. A lot of times, if you just don't mention it, you let it go, you'll forget about it. It won't even be a big deal. And so, for example, one couple came to me and they were married and they were separated. And the only time they saw each other was at a counseling session once a week. And that particular counselor wanted them to go through their issues. So basically, their only interaction was basically a chaperone fight. It was a very negative thing. And they were just getting further and further away. And she said, this is not working. What would you think that we should do? And of course, I'm the one who said, you realize this is what's happening, right? Every time you interact, it's negative. And I said, look, I'm all for counselors. There's a lot of great ones out there. But just like in everything else, there's some that aren't that good. And I said, I recommend you tell this counselor, you just say, we're going to take a break. We'll be back, but we're going to take a break. And that one day a week, you change to where now you're going to have lunch. And here's the rules. No issues are brought up. Mm-hmm. We are just going to talk positives. They had a child together. I think they had a son. Mm-hmm. I said, talk about some cute things he's done at school, or in soccer. Talk about funny jokes. Have them written down that you heard, or bring memes. Did you see this? The rule is it's got to be positive. And that may feel artificial. Oh, that's fake. Well, right now we're taking some extraordinary actions to rebuild some of this. And you're not able in this moment to handle the issues. And that's where we usually are mistaken when we think, hey, these people don't want to be together. Let's go through the issues. That's usually the worst thing to do, because your motivation is at an all-time low of actually working on these issues. So, for example, if there's a couple who's separated, and the one who left, usually there's one who initiates leaving. If you go to that person and say, let's start working through these issues, there's no motivation to do that. It's like, I want out of this. Are you kidding me? I don't want to have to put in extra work to prolong misery.
Right.
I mean, it's comical. And yet, unfortunately, that's the approach a lot of people take. And I'm sure I'm not making any friends by saying this, but that's just the wrong way to go. We actually have to rebuild motivation to be in this thing to begin with. And that's one of the things I really focus on in my courses and in my videos, is rebuilding that motivation so the other person wants to be with you. And then slowly and one at a time, you can start working through some things when the relationship is healthy enough.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if you've broken your leg. We're not going to be like, okay, man, I know you broke your leg yesterday, but let's start working on those calf muscles. Get up and let's do some jogging. That's the wrong time. You need healing first, at least to some degree. And so that's, you're just asking for some of the quick tips. That would definitely be one of them.
I mean, that's super, super powerful to hear. And just a quick example of the first step of the lying and all that, with one of my exes who definitely lied to me a lot, which is okay. It's all good now. But I would always say, it's okay. I promise I won't be mad. Right. Because I was just kept reinforcing, it's okay. I promise I'm not going to get mad. And you keep saying that, but they still just never tell you the truth. But it was I was trying to go for that, but couldn't achieve it.
And a lot of times that's from something in her past, a parent, another relationship, a brother, sister, friend, punished them for the truth. And whenever you're punished for the truth, you'll go for the lie to avoid the punishment. That's human nature.
Yeah.
So, you did the right thing. Sometimes it takes a long time to get to where the other person starts feeling like they can be honest with you. And the great thing is, if that relationship had continued, or in your future relationships, if you do interact with someone like that, once they actually try it out, because usually they will, they'll think, well, okay, I'm going to try telling them the truth. We'll just see. And you respond appropriately, at least not with just punishment and anger and viciousness, then that's a big moment.
Yeah.
And they begin to slowly open up more, and that intimacy begins to build. But yeah, you did the right thing. And sometimes, relationships have two people, and two people have to be doing what they need to do. But I get it.
I always say, when it comes to people and relationships like that, it's that people are doing the best they can with what they know.
Mm-hmm.
And so you see people show up in relationship, just like you're saying. Some people may never be ready, may never be able to be open up enough to allow that intimacy to build or to grow, or feel like they're in a safe space. With some people, it takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of communication. But showing up, and that's helped me deal with, sometimes early on the pressures of social media and all the things being thrown at me and the names being called and the threats and whatever else was out there at the time. I would always say that person's doing the best they can with what they know. So I don't want to add to whatever's on their plate that's causing them to be that way, because I've never met a happy person that will treat you bad or talk bad about someone, or a truly happy person, And so I'm like, okay, well, what is this person going through? Am I here to help them? Are they here to teach me something? Are they here to help me? Or do we just walk away and call it what it is, you know? And that's one lesson that I know I've learned that has helped me tremendously in my life is also that you have to, and you touched on it as well earlier, is that you have to teach people how to treat you. And if you could teach someone how to treat you, how you deserve to be treated, then those, you know, that those lies, those little white lies or those big lies, whatever they are not acceptable in your space. You teach them how, you know, to show up and vice versa. You know, that's what we do. And that's why communication can be so difficult because, you know, it's such a small factor in actual day-to-day living in life. So how do you communicate, or how does that person give and receive love, or how do they receive communication, and what is the thing that's for them to get to that space? And it's a lot of work, a lot of time I found, but it's all worth it. And I think like the more times we're able to have these kind of conversations, and for you to do what you do all the time, it only helps people get to that space because, you know, we come to this earth with no roadmap, no plans of what to do or how to do it, you know, and we all kind of figure it out as we go. And some of us have great teachers, some of us don't, you know, even the therapist, you know, there can be a great therapist, and they're just not great for you. You know, it's like that with me. I've had that with an acting coach or multiple acting coaches. It's like, hey, I know you're incredible. You have this massive roster of talent coming through, but like, we don't work together, you know, and I have to recognize that and understand that and be okay with that. You know, it is what it is. But then I go find someone else and, okay, well, now let's move on from there. Same thing with a counselor, same thing with people in your life. And I think if we're able to recognize that in ourselves and how we show up in the world, it'll help us in our relationships as well. But there's never enough tools and information and help from people like yourself that can help us get to that point, you know, and I'm excited to see, you know, where else it goes. I'm going to keep following your page, obviously, and seeing all your stuff. Might take a couple classes, courses, you know, I would love to, and kind of just keep it going, man. It's really awesome what you're doing. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, something you mentioned made me think of another tie-in for anxiety in relationships, if you guys would like to hear it.
I'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
All right. So my grandfather, who, you know, passed away 7 or 8 years ago, one of the greatest men that I've known, he had this amazing frame about him, and that no matter what was happening, it did not make him become someone else. He didn't change. In other words, he didn't get angry. My grandmother said, in 60 years of marriage, he never yelled. He never even raised his voice. Now, that wasn't because he was timid or passive or weak, because he was strong. He didn't have to, you know. If you think of really strong, you know, men, John Wayne, he didn't yell much. He didn't have to, right?
Don't have to. Yeah.
Don't have to. And that was him. And I remember several things happened to him. One of them was this guy who like ran into his truck, and it even injured my grandpa a little bit, damaged his truck. And the guy, like, you know, didn't have insurance, and he didn't pay him. And it was costing my grandpa money. And he finally just said, you know, forget about it. I just remember hearing my dad kind of talk to him about it. And my dad was like, this is not fair. You need to do something. He's like, I know. And I could just tell. I was just like, he's like, well, you know, whatever. It's not that big. He never showed even anger in that moment. Now, I've seen him angry, but usually he would just get quiet, and he would walk away from the situation if he had to. But he never changed his frame. It was just like, this is me. And that's powerful for anxiety. So for example, a golfer, you have a bad shot. One of the most powerful things you could do, and I heard a golf coach explain this. He said, you know, it'd be great if when I came up and you were walking away from the green, if I couldn't tell by your expression if you birdied or bogeyed, because you know, it's not changing your frame. You're not letting it rattle you inside. And as you know from golfing, that frame, that mindset, that nervousness, your emotions can really play in when you're dealing with this hand-eye coordination on these little bitty things that matter. Yeah. Being able to stay calm. And the same is true in relationships. I tell guys a lot, you know, one of the ways you can show strength that's attractive is that no matter what she does, and of course this applies to women too, but no matter what she does, she doesn't rattle you. She doesn't change you. She doesn't move you off your frame. You know, if she's acting a way she shouldn't, you can almost smile about it, almost show amusement, almost turn it into, you know, well, that's cute, almost like that. It's staying in your frame. And when people realize they can't rattle you, we tend to think that people who show anger, oh, maybe there's some strength in that. But the person who really shows the strength and who actually is going to be more successful with attraction, things like that, is the guy who's strong enough that he does not do that because he's living such an awesome life. He feels such gratefulness. He feels such inner strength that this small thing is just that. It's a small thing. And it's one of those things where, we're always working on that. But, and you're not going to be perfect at it, but the more that you can learn to do that in sports and relationships, the better you're going to be by far at both. And so it's working on having this frame inside of you, and you're not going to move off of it no matter what's happening around you. And maybe one day we can achieve perfection at that, but it's at least something to work toward, and you'll see improvements in your relationships and in your performance. You can work on that.
Yeah. I actually did mixed martial arts growing up. And at a certain point, there was a lot of cage fighting involved, and I would watch people fight a lot. And the ones that got angry, I would see all the time. It would be cloudy. They wouldn't be clear. They'd make bad decisions. They'd rush when they should have been defending. There's a lot of different moves that were and mistakes that were made. And I'll never forget this kid that I saw fighting. He was one of the best fighters I'd ever seen in person. And every single fight he did, he was laughing. He was laughing the entire time, smiling. Exactly. And it was never, and you think about that too, you get rage, you get anger, you get upset, and it clouds your judgment, it clouds your vision, and you don't react with a logical sense. It's like, okay, well, let me just destroy, get angry, and whatever I can, channel all that aggression. And sometimes that can help you. There's moments, but if you're able to step back and settle and think, what do I do? What is the best thing for me now? Is it get out of the way? It's not just charge like a bull, it's do I get out of the way? Do I defend myself? Do I, set up a couple moves to get me in there, it's being able to do that. And you look at that in your life as well. And it just changes the way you show up. So like to what you're saying about your grandpa, I mean, that's like one of the coolest things because, well, instead of letting that moment, like someone hitting his car, ruin his day or his month or his year, or to sit on that, it's okay. Well, this thing happened. Where do I go from here? Do I let it control me or do I control it? And it changes your way you approach life in general, basically.
It's interesting too, because I mean, I don't know if you've been following the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, but literally like, it sounds like from every single recording they've submitted that Johnny Depp has actually been the one to like, try to diffuse a situation. So, all the evidence literally is like the recordings, at least I've heard, have like kind of been in that vein, but I don't know.
Yeah, me too. And, sometimes when you're dealing with a toxic individual, they're still going to be toxic, even if you're doing the right things. And that's another thing. You have to just simply stay in your frame still. No one is going to be perfect. You're going to deal with situations you don't want to be in, and you're going to be angry sometimes. And it's how you can channel that temporarily, like you mentioned. And it's also, you have to decide if it's productive for me to be involved in this anymore. So for the case of my grandpa, could he have stayed in it longer and maybe got his money back? Yeah, but was it becoming a negative, the whole process? Was he in a position where he could just say, okay, you know what? I'm tired of this. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm just going to let it go. That's a powerful thing. When you can let it go, you can walk away and just be free from it. And that is so powerful in so many things. In sports, it's being able to walk away from a bad performance and not letting it define you. And to mention someone near and dear to our hearts, Jordan Spieth. Yeah. I remember someone telling me, you know why Jordan is so successful? And I said, I can probably name a bunch of things. He said, do you want to know the number one thing? I said, yeah. He said, because he can slice it 2 fairways over. And in his mind, that says nothing about him. That does not define him as a golfer. It doesn't mean a thing. He's going to go try to make birdie from there. Yeah. And he said a lot of golfers, they would swallow it. They'd take that in. That slice, oh, how embarrassing. What does that mean? Have I lost my swing? He said, not Jordan. Jordan's like, it doesn't mean a thing. Doesn't define me a bit.
Yeah.
And hopefully, would we all be better if we could do that?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely a line of that when it comes to acting as well. You make a mistake or you don't make a choice that you think sits right or looks great, or, you miss your lines up and everything. It's easy to get in your head about your rejection and just everything. and it's constantly teaching you how to let go and to be okay with it. And like, look, that moment happened. I'm still here. I'm still doing my thing. I'm still confident and happy with who I am. And if you're able to settle into that, sometimes it gives you the opportunity to not keep focusing on the past of what just happened. And you say, okay, well, guess what? The next take, the next scene, it's a fresh cut. It's a fresh start. And where do I go from here? And it's like I can stay there and continue that on and keep screwing it up because I'm stuck in the past or stuck in that moment. Or like I can rise to the occasion and say, hey, it's all good. Life is great. I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to wake up in the morning. I'm happy that I get to have a coffee and go on about my day. I'm also grateful that I'm in this position. So let me just do my thing. And that there's things like that you learn through time and through evolution, and we all learn the lessons differently, But for me, I would say absolutely, it's changed the way I've shown up and also the way that things affect me. And sometimes I'll do an audition for something, and I'll be done with it, won't think about it, and then I'll book it, a couple weeks down the line, and I'm like, what was that for? Like,
you forgot about it.
I had already forgotten, because the ones that come and go, like whether I get them or not, I did it in the moment and moved on, and it's just it's a lot more calming way to show about things. Because if you're constantly in your head, like I get people that get burnt out, and I've been doing this for 10 years. I can't make it. What's going on? I think I'm going to quit. I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't care what happens. Like, I do want to, chase my goals, achieve my goals. I do care, but I don't put all of my attachment and value into those things. It's more, I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. It makes me happy what I do. So regardless if I get to the end goal in my mind or not, I'm having fun the whole time.
The journey, right?
Exactly.
The journey.
Yeah. So,
and one of the reasons I love like learning from you as well and being able to discuss some of this stuff, like you said, you've seen so many breakups, and you have the data, you have the experience, and that really is how, as human beings, we solve problems and figure things out. And it's the experience, it's the data, and it's truly a pleasure to be able to sit here and talk about that with you.
Oh man, thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be here, guys. I've enjoyed all of it.
Yeah, likewise, man. Really appreciate your time. It's great to meet you, and looking forward to what comes next.
Me too. Great to meet you guys.
Likewise. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, bro.
Bye, man. Brock.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
And subscribe and hit the bell for a whole lot more to come.
Thanks for tuning in to Studio 22.